Mrs. Chilton?
Here.
Dr. Estrop?
Here.
Mr. O'Neill?
Here.
Mr. Rue? Mr. Copeland?
Here. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Commissioners. Today we have one work session item for you, and presenting that work session will be Shannon Meadows, our Community Development Director, specifically talking about our rent and utility assistance programs managed by NHP, but also discussing the broader homelessness issue. And with her tonight is also Elena Bradley from IHN. And so I'm going to turn it over to Shannon.
Hey, thank you, Commissioners. It's nice to be back. Feels like home. Glad to be presenting with you tonight. As Brian indicated, I want to talk about the emergency housing assistance programs that are currently available in the city of Springfield. There is an maybe. Hold on. Not working, Brian. You can drive for me. Okay.
Try again.
There we go. Okay, so as we all know, the COVID-19 pandemic has created a number of different economic hardships throughout the world. Here in Springfield, one of those economic hardships is definitely impacting housing and housing security. In Springfield, about 54% of our housing stock is rental. That's compared to about 52% within the state of Ohio. And what we know right now is in the state of Ohio, 40% of all renters are either facing eviction or will face eviction within the next 30 days because of their inability to pay rent. City staff, along with a number of other partners, have been working tirelessly over the last few months to put a new program in place to help individuals stay in their homes. Neighborhood Housing Partnership is running a rent and utility assistance program. This is being funded with federal CARES Act dollars, and individuals within the city who qualify can receive up to 3 months of assistance for rent and utilities. That assistance would be paid directly to landlords or the utility companies. This funding cannot pay for additional fees like late charges or fees for other non-payments. Utilities that would be include gas, electric, water, and sewer bills. Individuals who think that they need assistance or think that they might need assistance coming up should contact Neighborhood Housing Partnership directly. The phone number is 322-4623, or they can go straight to NHP's website. If you go to the NHP website, which is springfieldnhp.org, you will immediately see the COVID-19 assistance program right there on the home screen. Click on that, and then you flip back to a City of Springfield screen. This is because this is a direct partnership between the city and NHP. Individuals can go ahead and work through this screen, and they get to an eligibility section. Don't assume you don't qualify. That is the biggest piece of information that I share with you as commissioners, that I share with the public, regardless of if they think they need help, they very well know somebody who might. Do not assume you don't qualify. Go through, connect with NHP, and seek the assistance if you feel that you need it. Our neighbors who receive assistance through Metropolitan Housing or another direct HUD subsidy won't qualify under this program. They really should contact Metropolitan Housing directly at 325-7331. Housing authorities have their own assistance program through the CARES funds, and they need to administer and manage those directly. Already talked about that. So again, NHP's phone number is 937-322-4623. Now, the second part of housing security started in early September. the Centers for Disease Control issued a national moratorium on evictions. I think, honestly, the name is very misleading. This does not end evictions. Evictions can and will continue through the end of this year. However, the CDC order does provide some protections for renters who are unable to pay their rent and keep them housed at least through the end of this year or until the CDC order might be extended. Eligible renters have to meet the following qualifications. They have to have used their best efforts to obtain government assistance, hence the reason that the Rent and Utility Assistance Program is so important. They have to have experienced substantial loss of household income. It does not have to be directly related to COVID-19. They have to be making their best efforts to either pay their rent or make partial payments of rent during this process. And they have to be able to declare that if they are evicted, they will either become homeless or be placed in what we call a precarious housing situation. That would mean they would be couch surfing or doubling up with an in-law or something like that. The thing about the CDC order and being protected from eviction is documentation and record keeping is key. There is an actual legal declaration that all adults within a household have to complete and swear to under penalty of perjury. That declaration needs to be sent to the landlord, and I suggest that it is sent via certified mail so that there is a proof and receipt that it was done. That needs to be kept because it is most likely that you still would have an eviction hearing. The magistrate would just, if you qualify, give you a stay to remain in the rental unit during the CDC order. A copy of the declaration form can be downloaded from our city website. If you go to springfieldohio.gov, you will see right on the home screen the CDC eviction moratorium order. Click on that and you will see where you can download the declaration. So you can print this at home, you can go to the library and print it, but this declaration has to be completed to begin your protections under the CDC order. Like I said, send by certified mail and also keep a copy of the completed declaration so that you have that when you do go to court. The other important piece of documentation that individuals would need is proof of seeking other assistance. So reaching out to NHP for that rental assistance is critical, and NHP will be able to provide the documentation of either the assistance they were able to provide or the fact that you, the renter, have exhausted all government assistance available. Now, the CDC moratorium, like I said, does not end evictions. Individuals can still be evicted for criminal activity, threatening health or safety, property damage, violating local codes, or violating other requirements under the lease separate from payment of rent. Individual renters need to keep paying rent. The CDC order does not give you a free pass for 3 months. You still will have to pay all back rent at the end of the moratorium. So again, this is a stopgap that was issued from the Centers for Disease Control to attempt to keep as many people housed during September through December as possible. So it's imperative that those who need assistance seek the assistance. Currently, we are seeing an unprecedented number of individuals and families in need of emergency shelter within our city. Interfaith has continued since March 20th to provide non-congregate emergency shelter for individuals and families in need. Unfortunately, though, at the end of July, we had to start a shelter waiting list. This is the first time in over a decade. And the reason we say over a decade is because it's the first time since Elena and I have been around. We're not sure that there's ever been an emergency wait list in the past. This chart here is giving you an indication of the growth in need of emergency homeless sheltering. The blue bars are showing you the single individuals, that would be single men and single women, from March through September. The orange bar is showing, the orange bar is showing you the single individuals, and the blue bar is showing you the need for families who need emergency shelter. And then the gray bar that you see is the number of individuals on the waiting list. What you'll see there, obviously, is at the end of July and really during the second week of August, we saw exponential growth in need. We went from about 100 individuals to well over 250 individuals in need. At this time, I'd like, if Elena could join us, I'd like for her to share the current statistics of those that IHN is serving and kind of finish this up and have any questions from you.
Thank you, Shannon. Good evening. So, support the information that Shannon shared tonight. IHN has been faced with a 700% increase compared to 2019 in the emergency shelter need for families with children in the city. We are seeing a 350% increase in emergency shelter need for single men and women. And 79% of those that are experiencing homelessness in our community today are families with children. As of today, Interfaith is providing emergency shelter for 133 individuals in non-congregate shelters within the community. Out of that 133 individuals, we are providing services for 49 children, 24 families, and 52 single individuals. We have been throughout COVID, really, at the end of July and the spike in August, we've seen on a daily basis about 150% increase compared to what our normal capacity is with the daily numbers. And these numbers change as we transition individuals and families from emergency shelter into permanent housing placement. We immediately transition someone, individual or families with children, into emergency shelter. Our waiting list today currently has 154 individuals on that list. We have 55 families, which consist of 23 children, 58 men, and 41 women. Our intake team and housing crisis response program team is reaching out to the individuals on the waiting list on a weekly basis, making contact with them to see if they are still in need of emergency shelter, and we're asking that they call in weekly or daily to see if there's an opening and inform us if their circumstance has changed. In addition to emergency shelter, Interfaith Hospitality, we operate a program, homeless crisis response program, where we help individuals, helping to prevent them from entering into the emergency shelter. And we also help serve individuals, transitioning them more quickly out of emergency shelter. Since the onset of COVID in March, we've served 253 households. Average cost for prevention is anywhere from $2,200 to $2,500 per household. Average cost for rapid rehousing is anywhere from $3,000 to $3,700. And the difference between the two is typically those that we rapidly rehouse, landlords are requiring a double deposit or first month's and last month's rent, which is eligible under this specific program. So that enables us to be able to do that, to move individuals more quickly out of the shelter, opening up more space for those individuals and families that are faced with homelessness.
Oh, glad to be back in the forum, but this is one of our realities now. And if you have any questions, we're here to answer them. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. By the way, the article in the paper was well done, certainly brought forward this issue, and I know many people in our community appreciated knowing about the problem. I have several concerns. We have some help available, but I'm not sure people know that. And certainly the newspaper was one way to acquaint them, but we know the newspaper doesn't have the circulation that it used to. So one of the suggestions I would like to make is that you share this information with the churches within Springfield, as well as agencies like the United Senior Services and others, to make sure that we're getting information to the largest degree possible in their hands. Perhaps it's also something we could put a little line on our water bills. I know we have the capability of doing that. Simply to say, if you need housing help, call this number. And that goes obviously to everybody who pays a water and sewer bill in this city. So I want to encourage you to do that, first of all, to make people aware that some help is available. Secondly, I'm wondering if there are facilities, because we're out of space, in some churches that is not in use at present, that could be converted to temporary shelters. Or I'm even wondering, Brian, about the old building out by Pepsi, the old Pepsi bottling plant. I think we still own it, the old reserve. If it is functional at all, that we could set up an emergency shelter there. I don't know the condition of the building. It's been a while.
Yes, I'll just real quickly state we will be coming back to you here in the next couple of weeks with information about that building and what we're doing to facilitate the Downs rehab in relation to the homelessness issue.
I just think if we have any city buildings that are owned that we could make available on a short-term basis to meet the needs, and let's face it, we're living in great weather right now. A month or two from now, it's not going to be so great. And we need to have some plans to help folks who find themselves in this dilemma with some options so that they've got a place to live.
Yes,
so,
sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could just piggyback on that, it seems to me what we need to do is to communicate to people that if they need help, okay, but if you know someone else who needs help, because like our water bills, whoever's paying water bills has probably got a place to live, but they may know people who need help.
I know, Joyce, you have something, but let me just interject. Landlords can also encourage their tenants to seek help as well, right? The payments from the rent and utility assistance go straight to the landlord. So this really is a positive reciprocal relationship of keeping people in their homes, but also keeping landlords as whole as possible, because landlords have bills too.
Is there not a landlord organization that has some membership? I'm also thinking of the realtors in town who often deal in rental property. We probably ought to get the information to them also.
Yes, sir.
And I would like for you to kind of back up a little bit, because sometimes legalese kind of lose things. So there is help, but it's from September to December. Is that correct?
The CDC moratorium, so the declaration that you would be homeless if you get evicted, currently is set to expire December 31st. The rent and utility assistance program funded by the City of Springfield, managed by Neighborhood Housing Partnership, will remain in place for as long as we're facing this housing crisis, or until we run out of money.
Okay, so if you are a citizen and you are in trouble with your rent and your housing, you need to contact you first or Neighborhood Housing Partnership?
Neighborhood Housing Partnership.
Okay, because you got to document what's going on and be making an effort to pay some rent.
Yes, my tried and true advice for anyone who lives in the City of Springfield who's finding themselves in trouble in paying their rent or their utilities is to reach out to Neighborhood Housing Partnership. There are many other agencies that might be able to assist. If those other agencies are better prepared, NHP will put you in contact with them. We're trying to use NHP as a one-stop so that we can get the best assistance to the renting family as fast as possible.
Okay, and one last question. Can you tell us how the Interfaith Hospitality, how does this work with them? I mean, do they contact Elena's place first if they need shelter immediately?
Yes, and I'm sorry, immediately if someone is in crisis, and they need emergency shelter, they can contact our agency, and that number is 937-325-8154. And we also partner with United Way 211, where someone can contact 211 directly, and they will be able to link them directly to Interfaith to be able to access emergency shelter or get the information needed to place them on the waiting list.
Okay, I also want to encourage people, you cannot remember anything else. Remember 211
That's
if
right.
you need help. Thank you.
You can also use 211 for the rent and utility assistance. They'll direct connect to NHP. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay? Thank you very much.
Both of you.
Mr. Manager?
Yes, and commissioners, we will have two add-ons tonight related to the homelessness issue we just heard about. The first one will be authorizing the city manager to enter into a 129 agreement with Interfaith Hospitality Network of Springfield, Inc. for homeless sheltering services during the COVID-19 pandemic, confirming and approving those services provided under the 129 agreement from March 20th of this year, 2020, with the passage of this ordinance. We also will have an emergency resolution placed on tonight that is declaring homelessness a public health crisis in the city of Springfield and declaring an emergency.
Any questions from commission about that? Okay. Then I think that that takes care of the informal.
That is correct.
So let me inform the commissioners of something related to us being here this evening. Today I have signed a termination of the emergency mayoral proclamation and executive order that began on March 16th, 2020 in response to the COVID-19 virus. The original proclamation and its amendments addressed emergency operations of the city, allowing the city manager to act upon essential documents, preserve public safety, and conduct virtual public meetings. Although the public health crisis continues to exist, I have terminated the executive order in order to resume normal operations of the city and to hold public meetings in person in a safe manner, such as this evening. So basically what I'm doing, according to the charter, I'm supposed to inform the commissioners when I eliminate a proclamation. Okay, any questions about that? Okay, then City Commission meeting is called to order. Please rise to the invocation and pledge of allegiance. Our God, these are desperate times. As we were reminded of this evening, we have a number of needs in our community arising from the problems of the virus. Help us to support each other and do what we can to help those in need in this terrible time. and help us this evening to make decisions good for the people of Springfield. In your name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, a nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill? Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes. Clerk will proceed with first reading.
Authorizing and directing the city manager to dispose of a 3D printer being property owned by the city and no longer needed for municipal purposes and should be disposed of pursuant to codified ordinance section 149.03.
Are there any questions about the first reading? Clerk will proceed with second readings.
Approving an amendment to the existing OPDH development plan located in the Derby Glen Village subdivision to remove the requirement for installation of public sidewalks.
Move to
So
adopt.
moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Are there questions or comments from the commission?
No, I'm just glad we finally got this one through.
Okay, is there anyone who wants to speak to this matter in the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing the exercise of the city's option to renew agreements with the Huntington National Bank for treasury management, depository services, and security custody services for an amount not to exceed $50,000.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? Mr. Estrop?
I asked the director, our law director, if there was a conflict of interest since I have depository and a mortgage with Huntington National Bank, and was informed that that was not the case. That used to be the case when I was superintendent of schools, but apparently the law has changed, so I will be voting for this, not abstaining.
Anyone else? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into LPA agreement number 33107, amendment number 1, between the city and the Ohio Department of Transportation in connection with the CLA Sidewalk Project, PID number 109478, provide clarity regarding the funding sources.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Confirming purchases and the obtaining of services for the city and providing for payments therefor and declaring an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Confirming and approving the adoption of a revised city investment and deposit policy and authorizing the city's finance director to do all things deemed necessary to implement and apply the revised city investment and deposit policy and declaring an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments, Mr. Estrop?
I was wondering, Mr. Bechtel, if you could explain exactly what the changes are going to be in the investment
Sure,
policy, please.
I would be happy to, Commissioner. In the course of our investments, we lay out the exact instruments that we would be investing in, and typically we limit those so that we spread our risk around a little bit. But what has happened is the interest rate that is available through Star Ohio has become so attractive that we have continue to invest more and more money with Star Ohio. Previously, we came to you and asked to raise the percentage of our portfolio up to 40%, and you graciously changed the policy to that. But the interest rate is so favorable compared to the rest of the investments that are available to us. We've asked to come back and go to a higher percentage, which I believe is 80%.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with B&B Sealing LLC, doing business as Duraseal for the crack seal and joint repair on runway 624 project at the Springfield Beckley Municipal Airport for an amount not to exceed $129,537.50 and declaring an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission?
I just wanted to compliment Tom and Seth for a great article in the paper today, speaking about improvements at the airport. Very important economic development tool for the city.
If you folks that are leaving, we thank you for your investment in the community.
Well, I'd like to thank all of you for your help us make this possible, and we're happy to pay the tax to the city of Springfield because we can attest that you're doing a good job. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Clerk will call the roll.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing the exercise of the city's option to renew the contract with Polydyne Incorporated for the purchase of liquid polymer for use by the city's wastewater treatment plant for an amount not to exceed $67,596, confirming and approving related expenditures from September 30th, 2020 to the passage of this ordinance and declaring an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into Amendment Number 1 to the contract for the purchase of water meter equipment with Everett J. Prescott Incorporated to increase the contract amount by $100,000 for a total amount not to exceed $730,784.65 and declaring it an emergency therein.
Move to adopt. Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments? Mr. Estrop?
Yes, I was just wondering if you, Mr. Heck, or Mr. Moore might tell us why we need to spend $100,000 more.
Yes, I will call Mr. Moore up and have him answer that question.
Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner. So this request is because we have started replacing some of our larger meters out in the system. And just to put things into perspective, a meter on a typical residential house costs about $119. It's a 5/8 inch meter. When we jump up to an 1.5 inch meter, which can be on some smaller commercial properties, they're $1,500 per meter. So as we've gotten to replacing some of these larger meters, they're roughly 20 to 26 years old. We have realized we need to increase what we're spending to replace those.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? Clerk will call the roll.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into Amendment Number 1 to the Springfield Comprehensive Housing Strategic Planning and Policy Development Consulting Agreement with Greater Ohio Policy Center Incorporated to extend the contract completion date for a period of 1 year and declaring it an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into LPA agreement number 37472, amendment number 1, between the city and the Ohio Department of Transportation in connection with the CLA Springfield North Burnett Columbus project, PID number 110976, to increase funding for construction and to provide clarity regarding the funding sources and declaring an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Confirming and approving change order number 3 to the contract between the city and Kokosing Industrial Incorporated for the Erie Interceptor Express Sewer Project to increase the contract amount by $326,615.15 for a total contract amount not to exceed $21,007,406.62, authorizing the city manager to execute said change order number 3 and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission?
I was,
Explain, please.
I was wondering
Gotta ask this one.
if Mr. Moore might explain why we've increased the contract by almost 327,000.
Yes, Chris,
So-
if you would like to answer this.
Yes, absolutely. So to put things into perspective, this was a $20 million project. So the total change orders on the whole project worked out to 4.1%. So I always like to look at this as if I were doing a $10,000 project at home and it cost me $10,400 when I was done, would I be happy? So I'm pleased with where this project ended up. The additional work on this change order, there are over 50 items. This is the final change order and it has additions and subtractions. The big items would be one, paving Skinner Lane, which is the road that parallels 68 by the old Target store. That road was damaged significantly during construction, so we repaved it. And there was an additional manhole that had to be installed where a lift station was decommissioned at the old ODOT garage. And then you may all remember there was a fuel pipeline that runs through that area where the old 84 lumber used to be. And we ran into some contaminated soil there. And that cost a significant amount of money to get removed and properly disposed of. So this, is the final change order for a project that started in 2011 and is going to serve our community in great ways for many, many years to come.
Very good. Thank you.
And I wanted to add for commissioners, so this was the completion of one of the largest projects we've had in our history, specifically related to our sewer system. The first being the high rate treatment plant that was constructed at the wastewater treatment plant, and then as well as this Erie Express sewer. So these were part of our long-term control plan projects that we needed to complete as part of our process in meeting our long-term control plan. I want to commend our staff because obviously, again, two of the largest sewer-related projects that we've completed in our history, and some would say two of the largest projects that we've completed as an organization, and to be at the end of those two projects is a great accomplishment for our staff and for you as commission that have been involved in this from the very beginning.
So,
Go ahead.
so an increase of $326,000 is a lot of money, but this is a $21 million expenditures and is required by the federal government to deal with these issues. So I'm a part of Mayor's Alliance, as many of you know, and all of the cities in Ohio, more or less, have been under similar orders, and we're all very frustrated by how this has been handled in the cities of Ohio.
Mark, what's the payoff date on this baby?
Oh,
We'll be gone, right?
a long time, 30
Okay,
years.
just want to make sure. How many years?
30.
30 years.
Okay? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Dr. Estra?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Confirming and approving change order number 2 to the contract between the city and Kennison Excavating Incorporated for the 2020 miscellaneous water service replacement project to increase the contract in an amount not to exceed $23,072.60 for a total amount not to exceed $806,627.60, and to extend the contract completion date to October 2nd, 2020, and authorizing the city manager to execute said change order number 2 and declaring an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission?
Yes. Could the staff talk about, the location of the water service replacement project?
Yes. Chris, would you like to provide that answer?
Yes. So during this project, there was work done on portions of Van Buren, Euclid, Fostoria, Maplewood, Florence, Linden, and Oakwood Place. These were all streets that are being paved this year or will be paved in the very near future. We wanted to get the water services up to current standards before the new asphalt was installed.
So basically, you're going in, doing the water lines, tearing up the streets first, then coming along and repaving them. Is that the way it goes?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to point out that when we asked the people of Springfield to increase the tax, part of the commitment was to spend a significant amount of money on streets. And those of us actually on the south side are seeing a bunch of that, as are people on the east side and other parts of the community. We are trying to keep our promise to the people of Springfield. Anybody else? Clerk will call the roll.
Dr. Estra?
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Param Electric Incorporated for the CLA Springfield North Vernon Columbus project, PID number 110976, rebid for an amount not to exceed $87,567 and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Dr. Estra?
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Confirming and approving change order number 2 to the contract between the city and Sterling Quality Concrete LLC for the 2020 sidewalk curb and gutter program to increase the contract in an amount not to exceed $43,710.38 for a total amount not to exceed $278,436.32, and authorizing the city manager to execute said change order number 2 and declaring an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? Mr.
Just like
Estrada.
to have an explanation of the change order, please.
Chris?
Yes. As you may recall, as part of our paving program this year, we opted not to serve sidewalk, curb, and gutter in many places because those notices were hitting right as the pandemic began. This change order is for work that was done on Euclid near the bike path. Some of it right where Euclid Elements used to be, and other was across the street where the sunflower field is. And both of those areas lead right up to the bike path. As we got in there to do the work, we realized that one, the curb and gutter that was being done as part of the project didn't have anything behind it because the walk was in such disrepair, especially on the Euclid Element side from the large fire. And we also realized that many of the sidewalks were in good shape, but you could not get to the bike path as you got down to those two properties. So this change order replaced sidewalk and some curb and gutter in front of those properties to make everything more accessible and tidy the project up.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
The next two items have been added to the agenda. Authorizing the city manager to enter into a 129 agreement with Interfaith Hospitality Network of Springfield Incorporated for homeless sheltering services during the COVID-19 pandemic, confirming and approving services provided under the 129 agreement from March 20th, 2020 to the passage of this ordinance and declaring it an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland,
Yes.
declaring homelessness as a public health crisis in the city of Springfield, Ohio, and declaring it an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience?
Yes, Commissioners, I do know that Health Commissioner Charlie Patterson would like to address the commission related to this item.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager, Mr. Mayor, and Commissioners. I would applaud your efforts to consider this unprecedented problem within the city of Springfield with your declaration this evening. We certainly have never seen the types of numbers and the types of issues that your staff is dealing with, and that Interfaith Hospitality and many others within the city are dealing with. I know that you've also been knowing about the issues at the food bank, dealing with the Kroger property as you have, and COVID has taken some of the ills of our city and made them much, much worse. So I would appreciate any of you that are considering voting for this, adopting the resolution this evening. Your staff, I would tell you, has been unrelenting in their pursuit of finding a warm place to sleep for the citizens of Springfield. And as one of the key social determinants of health, we know that those basic needs are things that many of us take for granted, but we can't take them for granted, especially right now during the midst of this pandemic. So thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Clerk, call the roll.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes. That concludes our agenda. Are there other items that come before us from commissioners? Mr. Estrop?
I have my usual three questions, but I have a question before that. Member of the community asked me the other day, what's going on in downtown with all the streets being torn up and new pipe being laid? Is it gas? Is it water? So I thought I would ask.
Yes, the majority of the work that you see in our downtown is related to Columbia Gas's pipeline replacement program. So as you know, Columbia Gas has been mandated to replace all of their old cast iron pipe with plastic pipe. They've been moving throughout the community. This year, downtown was the main area of focus for them. And so they are currently replacing their lines. You'll see some temporary pavement, some permanent patches. And then also, I know one of the items that many people ask about is the sidewalk. They see asphalt go back in the sidewalk. That is a temporary patch. Before Columbia Gas would leave the open trenches with just compacted gravel. And we've asked them to start in the last couple years to put asphalt in there. And then they will come back, pull out the asphalt, and replace all the sidewalk at one time.
Thank you. My usual three questions. How are we doing service-wise in terms of city operations as it relates to the COVID pandemic? Secondly, how are we doing on the south side, particularly the Kroger development? And then how are we doing financially?
Yes, so from a organizational standpoint, we are doing very well. I'm pleased to say that we have a extremely low number of those impacted or affected by COVID. either directly impacted themselves or in quarantine for other purposes. It's one of the lowest numbers we've had since this started, which is great news. Knock on wood that continues. An update, our one officer that was inflicted with COVID-19 continues to get better each and every day, and we hope to have him return to us very soon, but we want him to continue healing from this virus. From an organizational standpoint, you see we're back in here tonight with the public. Again, we're being proactive and also staying cautious at the same point. As Warren indicated, we're not out of this public health crisis. Yes, we were able to rescind the emergency proclamation locally, but the virus still exists, and so we're still taking precautions. We're still going out of our way to protect our employees as well as the public, but we are slowly opening things back up. Tonight's an example of that. We're able to do so with masks and separation and temperature checks and other things. I commend our facilities staff for the work that they've done. We continue to improve the experience as well. We're still keeping things virtual as an option for those. Hopefully the sound was a little better today. Two of our speakers were not previously working. Those have been fixed now. So we're constantly trying to make tweaks and stuff to make the experience better for the public, as well as we still continue to offer virtual services. This past week, our building regulations division started taking in-person appointments Mondays and Wednesdays from 8 a.m. to 11:30. So again, we're being proactive, but we're also being cautious about this because, again, the virus still exists, and we want to be cautious, again, for both our employees as well as the public as a whole. So I'm very happy with how things are moving as an organization at this point.
Our continuing thanks to the city employees who have kept the city and the city services running since the beginning of this pandemic. I know it hasn't been easy, but our sincere thanks to all involved who kept our city running.
Yep. Again, I commend our staff for the adjustments and the adaptions that they have made through this pandemic. Each week something new happens or changes, and they adapt and adjust to that. So I commend them for their ability to do that and continue to serve the citizens of Springfield. From a South Limestone redevelopment, specifically on the Kroger, we were with the developer late last week, going through the building as he works to finalize a DSA, a development services agreement, as well as a pro forma cost estimate and business plan as it relates to the redevelopment of the Kroger property. So we're hopeful that we'll have something to present to commission in the very near future as it relates to that redevelopment. Again, exciting news on South Limestone. We were successful in obtaining $2.5 million to start the reconstruction and redesign of the South Limestone corridor, starting from Leffel, the intersection of Leffel and 72 up to Lansdowne. And we actually present Thursday of this week to the state of Ohio, seeking approximately $5 million for the rest of the project from Lansdowne to Singer Street, which is just north of the Kroger development. But so we're excited for the opportunity to continue moving this and taking advantage of the investment already made by the state of Ohio with the widening of I-70, and then this first phase of the redevelopment of the South Limestone corridor, and then hopefully moving forward with phase 2 right after that as well.
All good news. Thank you.
Mark?
Yes, Commissioners and Mayor, I'm happy to report that we're doing well financially. We finished up the month of September only less than 3% behind where we had been in 2019 on income tax. So that's really good news. Our cash balances continue to stay strong, and many thanks to our staff for being very careful with their spending through this point in time. It's going to be an interesting budgeting season as we move forward here, since we delayed a number of projects and we're very careful with the spending that we did. But everybody stepped up and we've kept our expenses low, and it's allowed us to maintain significant cash balance.
It seems to me, Mark, that speaks well of our local economy, since the city is so heavily reliant on the local income tax. So I want to thank those businesses who remained open and the folks who showed up to work, creating services or products that others are purchasing. I think we've got to be the exception to the rule, because I know Mayor Copeland has said on many occasions how other communities are really other cities are really taking it on the chin financially. And it seems to me we've been pretty fortunate to avoid that, knock on wood, up to now.
Absolutely. It makes my job quite a bit easier.
Good job. Keep up.
Well, and
the
I
good
think
work.
it speaks to the strategic planning and partnerships that we've had throughout the community in diversifying our economic base. Previously, as we all know, we were overly reliant on the automotive industry, which is typically more cyclical than other industries. We've done a concentrated effort, again, through various partnerships throughout the community with the county, the CIC, and others, to diversify that economic base so that we can stave off, not to say that we can't be exposed to it, because it obviously has impacted all industry sectors, but by diversifying our economy and not being so dependent on one specific industry has helped us in a time like this.
Surely. Yep.
Anything else from commissioners?
Yes, I was looking at our calendar, so next Monday, I believe, is Columbus Day. That's not a city holiday,
That is not a city holiday.
so we will be open for business.
That is correct.
Thank you. And the other thing was Commissioner O'Neill had mentioned something about trick or treat in the city. Are we having trick or treat this year?
Yeah, so typically the sheriff is responsible in the state of Ohio for setting Beggars Night on Halloween, and our sheriff has come out following CDC guidelines and guidance that we will hold a Beggars Night on October 31st, which is Saturday, from, I believe, 6 to 8. But again, emphasizing and the information they've put out, and I know Charlie from the health department's put out, is following the CDC guidance and guidelines as it relates to trick or treat and Beggars Night. And we have information on our website, and I know the county sheriff has information related to that on their website as well.
Thank you. So you'll put that up on the website for the city of Springfield.
Yes.
Okay. Anyone in the audience want to speak to us?
Oh, come on.
I have a question to you folks. Could you hear the meeting well tonight? Oh, good. Because I couldn't part of the time. Maybe the echoes off of the walls, I guess. Okay? No one else wants to say anything? Well, we welcome our citizens. Most of the folks who are here tonight are regulars, and we appreciate you being here. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes?
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes. Meeting's adjourned.